Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Her Silent Howl. Episode 10. Celeste POV. The first thing I see when I wake up is darkness, and cold concrete ceilings. Cara, what happened? I asked Celeste. We have to talk, but we're not alone. She responded, worry in her words. I stood up from the bed and looked around. There, in the dark on a chair was Huitzilopochtli, his eyes fixed on me. I scrambled to the farthest corner of the bed, covering my stomach defensively. He stood and turned on the light. Relax, child of Chantico. If I wanted to kill you right here, I would have done it at any point during the 24 HRS you've been asleep. He said, and I was surprised he spoke English as well. He must have read my face because he smirked, surprised I can speak English? I have been alive for over a millennium. I speak many languages. If you're not going to kill me, why did you take me? I asked. I didn't say I wasn't going to kill you. I am just not doing it now. It will be during the full moon, when Koyalzarki can watch, he taunted. My eyes brimmed with tears at his words. My pups. He flinched, ever so slightly, that I thought he actually felt bad when he said, yes, well that is unfortunate. I didn't know you were pregnant. I did try to take you when you were younger, to avoid more bloodshed. He said, as if that excused his actions. He moved over to a mini fridge and opened it. There is water and food in here as well as snacks. There's some clothing in the drawers and a bathroom through that door. There's no way in or out but through this door. So don't try to do anything rash, you will hurt yourself trying. I will be back in a few hours. Try to do anything to escape and I will make sure you live longer than your pups. He said and left the room. I could hear several padlocks click into place. I let out a sob. Cara, how are we here? I don't know what happened. We were sleeping and then we were in the hands of Huitzilopochtli. I'm sorry, Celeste. That was my doing. I led us outside while you slept, Cara said, guilt evident in every word. But why? I couldn't understand why she would do that to us. Selene showed me that Huitzilopochtli would come for us. He killed so many in our pack. So much loss. Gabriel, Valeria, little Melly, and the girls. So much death, just for us. She told me that the only way to avoid it was to turn ourselves in. That he wouldn't hurt us until the full moon. But I couldn't tell you. Markus would have never let us go and you wouldn't have been able to keep it from him. I had to wait and do it while you slept. But our pups, I sobbed. It's not all lost, Celeste. Markus has 2 weeks to find us and rescue us. We have to trust our mates and our friends. They won't let us down. She said soothingly, eat, we can't let the pups suffer. We must stay strong. We will need our strength. I went to the bathroom and then to the mini fridge. I grabbed some granola bars and a sandwich I found there. I forced myself to eat them, then hugged a pillow and cried myself to sleep while Cara sang me lullabies in my head. I woke up some hours later when I heard the padlocks start to unlock. I sat up at the farthest corner of the bed again. Huitzilopochtli came in with some equipment and a bag of food. He saw the empty sandwich package and nodded. Good, you have eaten something. I need you to sit here, he said, as he placed a white screen behind a chair. What are you going to do? I asked. We are going to Mexico, and for that you need a passport. I need some pictures to get one for you, he explained, showing me the camera. And if I refuse? I asked. Don't refuse, Celeste, we need to follow along until Markus finds us, Cara said. Then I will force you, and that will only end with you injured. I prefer not to hurt women without need, he said, and I scoffed. You have systematically killed everyone in my pack. The ones that survived were starved, beaten, and then sold to you as well. Which part of that was needed? His eyes darkened in anger at my words. The fight was not my plan. I only wanted you and your mother. That's why I hired them to do it according to your laws, but they were mad. The fight was senseless. I cut all my contact with them afterwards, only to find out they were trying to sell the young girls they took from there. I bought them, looking for you. I knew you weren't dead, but I didn't know who you were, so I bought them all. And then killed them. I snarled. He looked offended at that. I wouldn't kill innocent people. Those girls were half dead. I fed them, and when they were well enough, I took them to a brujo, sorcerer, and erased their memories of what happened to them. I dropped them off at several borders of packs in Mexico that I knew would be good to them. My hand went to my mouth and I sat up now. You didn't kill them, I said as tears came to my eyes. I do not harm women, he insisted. But you would kill me? Hutsalo Helios, he said. What? Call me Helios. Hutsalapoktli is a name I haven't used in a long time. You don't hurt women, but you would kill me? I asked. How did that make sense? Yes. I am not a monster. I am simply fulfilling a promise I made to my mother. Everyone who contributed to my mother's death will pay. Now enough talking. Sit, before I make you, he said coldly. I sighed and did as I was told. After he was done, he simply took his equipment and went towards the door. Wait, I said. He paused at the door. Where is Sandra? He looked at me curiously. I don't know what you did to her, but she tried to kill you when I brought you back. I killed her. She was not a good person, but she was the only way I could find you. I brought you dinner. We should be traveling in a few days. With that he left, leaving me stunned on the chair as I heard the padlocks click back into place. Cara, what are we going to do? I sighed at her. Right now, we're going to eat dinner, she said, and then, as much as you hate to be the damsel in distress, we're going to wait for our mate to rescue us. I sighed and ate dinner and did the only thing I could think to do. I slept. In the morning, Helios came by with breakfast. As he was heading towards the door, I thought of something. Wait. Hoots Helios. Can I please have a couple of books? I have nothing to do here. I was just overthinking while I was stuck in here and it was driving me mad. He looked at me curiously again, then said, we will be leaving tomorrow. You can buy some at the airport, and left. Padlocks clicked back into place. Atlas is pulling at the mate link. I'm going to try to talk to him. Maybe he's already close by, Cara said sometime later in the morning. Hurry, I said, knowing I wouldn't know anything until she was done. I forced myself to eat my breakfast as I waited for Cara to tell us if Markus was close. Celeste, Cara started. I stopped breathing. Are they close? I could feel a deep sadness emanating from her. No, they almost died. The pain of us being taken, Markus' heart almost exploded. Atlas put him in a healing sleep. They are fine now. He is using all their energy to reach out. To make sure we're okay. I told him everything we knew about leaving for Mexico and where we were, and that he hasn't hurt us or the pups. They will look for us. He said when we go to the airport, to look at as many cameras as we can. Evergreen software will find us and track us. If we get taken to a store, look at the camera. If we are at a stoplight, look for a traffic camera. They will find us. I couldn't stop the tears from falling down my eyes again. This entire time I had been worried about the pups, and I didn't even think about what could have been happening to Markus. It's my fault, Cara howled in the back of my head. No, you did what was necessary. We will survive this. Our mates are strong, I said. You and Atlas have a plan. It will work. We will play along with Helos and find a way to make it out of this. He doesn't know Atlas could reach us. We have the upper hand. It's been 11 days since I was kidnapped and, honestly, I'm so confused. I have got to be the most well-cared for kidnapped victim in history. While Helos said he doesn't hurt women, he is planning to kill me. But yet, any time that I've had discomfort from the pregnancy, he's practically jumped through hoops to help me. We bought a bunch of books at the airport, then he upgraded us to first class when the seats were giving me back pain. He had yet to restrain me, hurt me, or even threaten me since that first day. I was eating full meals, he was indulging my constant bathroom breaks. Which meant we hit about 5 different gas stations once we were in Mexico on the way to his hideout. I made sure to always look at the camera each time we stopped. He had even gotten me a craving I had mentioned as we made our way out of the airport food court. We finally arrived at his mansion in Mexico. It was just outside of Mexico City, near the pyramids we had seen in our vision. I was actually surprised he was so close. I'd seen and felt his sorrow in the vision. I knew this place held bad memories for him, and yet he chose to stay. It's like he chose to relieve that pain every time he looked out of the window. He allowed me to move about his house when we arrived. I was even allowed to go outside the balcony. I was too far along the pregnancy to shift now, and he knew it. The house was surrounded by giant concrete fence and guards. I had nowhere to go. I spent a lot of time in my bedroom, but Cara encouraged me to go outside. I was sitting outside in the sun by the gardens when I heard him walk by. "You're finally out of your room," he said. I didn't answer. He sat down on the chair next to me and just looked off into the distance to where the pyramids were. "Why do you do it?" I asked. "Because they killed my mother," he answered automatically. "I mean, why do you live so close to the pyramids?" "That's where it happened, isn't?" I asked. He nodded, still not looking at me. "I made a promise to my mother to avenge her. They will all pay for killing her." He stopped and hesitated a little before he decided to continue. "Sometimes I get tired. Tired of killing, tired of fighting. I bought this place to remind me of the promise. Of what they did to her. I was abused, starved, beaten, and mentally broken for 12 years by the same people that murdered my family, my pack, my friends. When I was free of them, I didn't seek revenge, all I wanted was to free the rest of my friends. I shook my head. Your way sounds exhausting and heartbreaking. You said you've been alive for over a millennium, but have you really even lived? I asked. That is not important. I have a promise to fulfill, he said, standing up. And if you don't know the whole story? What if your siblings were right? What if your mother was being influenced by evil and it was the only way? Would you stop? I asked him as he walked away. He stopped, never turning around. He looked up at the sky. Dinner will be in 20 minutes. Was all he said before he left. I sighed and tilted my head up at the sky while I caressed my heavy bump. For the 100th time, I asked Selene for guidance. I tried pulling at the link but it was empty. I sent up a message to Markus, telling him I loved him and missed him. I told him that our pups were okay and hoped the wind carried the message to him. We had only 2 more days before the full moon. We were running out of time. Markus POV. I had thought 2 days without Celeste was excruciating. Every day I felt like another part of my soul left my body. Outside of looking for her and organizing people for her rescue, I was barely going through the motions. It's been almost 2 weeks since she's been gone and it's been about 5 days since we've managed to find any more hits on Evergreen software from her or Huitzilopochtli. Tomorrow was the full moon. After we woke up, we'd seen Celeste looking at cameras over and over. My heart had soared. She was fine. She did not look hurt. We followed the software hits from the airport in Phoenix to a place right outside Mexico City. We set up camp just outside Diego's pack grounds. Lupe, Tomas' mother, had allowed us to set up camp in her bar. Diego's location in the mountains provided a lot of protection, however did not provide stable internet. We needed all resources we could get in order to find Celeste, plus we couldn't drain all of their resources. We had brought all of our warriors with us. Red and Kelly had agreed to take care of the pack protection. Maya and Camilla had also come along. Danny had begged her to stay but Maya refused. Pregnant or not, she would not abandon Celeste and she threatened to remove all of your family jewels from your body if you try to leave me here when Danny tried to make her stay. Atlas had tried to connect with Cara again, but had to give up as we couldn't afford to lose another 2 days of energy trying to reach her. We knew she was alive, we would know if she wasn't, and we had 0 indications that Cara had lied about not being hurt. I looked up at the moon after I let Atlas run loose again. It was the only way we kept the last of our sanity intact and the pain in our chest from overtaking us. Alpha, we found movement. Evergreen's mind link came through. On my way, Atlas took off running back towards the bar. I shifted the moment I got to the door, taking a pair of shorts Danny was holding out to me. What's happening? I asked, rushing over to where the computers were set up. The drones we have circling the pyramids picked up activity this evening. It is a bunch of men setting up atop of the moon pyramid. Diego has confirmed they are men that work for Huitzilopochtli, Evergreen said, looking tense. I looked at the monitors. The men were setting up a long table with a white cloth on top. I growled, knowing what it was supposed to be. Have we found a way to get up there quickly? I asked. No Alpha, we will need to catch them before they take her up. Jillian said. How are we supposed to stop him from jumping up there with her? I said, it had been the part we were stuck on. No matter how many numbers we have, if we can't get Celeste away from him, he can just jump away like he did at the pack house. Once we're near. You need to mind link Celeste. It's our only hope. She needs to get away from his hold and then we attack, he said. If we get Celeste away, we need to get her as far away as we can from here. Once he doesn't have her, he will leave. He can't do what he wants without her. Once we have her, we retreat. We don't know how to kill a god yet. We run, and live to see another day, and we prepare to hunt him down once we have more information on how to kill him, I said. There were nods from everyone in the room. How are we going to surprise him? Can you pull up the surveillance feed of the drones when we mapped out the place? I asked Evergreen. With a few clicks of his keyboard, we started going over the feed we'd watched many times over. There, I said, and he froze the feed. Those little cubbies on the side of the mini pyramids. They should provide enough coverage for a few of us to hide there while we wait for them to show up. They are all around the front, we can hit them from all sides. Those are barely partitions. They have no roof and no door. They might see us there easily, Jillian said. It's the best we've got. 2 or 3 to each one. If someone is seen, they are close enough to be attacked, I said. We'll trickle in throughout the day, in case they are watching. Use hats, scent maskers, whatever you need to do. Don't make it obvious you're a werewolf, Danny said, handing out the cans of spray that cover your smell. I almost wanted to laugh. All of our men were not only werewolves but warriors. They were all near or over 6 feet, huge, and if we're being honest, most were white, myself included. We had very little chance of not being seen if they were watching, but it was worth a shot. Everyone get a good night's rest. Tomorrow we get out Luna back, I said, and everyone howled. I walked out of the bar and looked up at the sky. Please help me get Celeste and the pups back safely. Take my life if you need it, but don't let them be hurt. I sent up the plea to the moon goddess, hoping she would hear me. I need another run, Atlas pleaded. All yours, I responded. The pain of not being with Celeste was always a little less when I wasn't in control. We shifted and Atlas took off running. We took down a black bear as we ran fast and far. Always trying to reach Celeste, only to find the link empty. Tomorrow. Tomorrow we would hear her voice again. We came back around midnight and dropped into the bed above the bar. Exhausted was the only way we could guarantee sleep. I miss you, Tulai, I said before I let sleep take me, hoping the wind carried my love to her. How are we going to get her out of his hands? I asked Atlas as we waited for dusk in our hiding spot. I don't know. We're going to have to work on the fly. Maybe we just distract him long enough for Celeste to run. He answered. That's not very comforting. I said. That's all we've got, man. All we need is to get her away from him. What happens to us doesn't matter. He growled. If something happens to us, Tulai could go into early labor. We are only 3 weeks from her due date, I reminded him. Then we don't get killed. Atlas said with determination, and I rolled my eyes. If only it were that easy. Alpha, there's movement at the far end of the grounds. 2 cars are approaching. Mateo said via mind link. I could see Diego was also mind linking. It's almost time. Our priority is getting the Luna out safely. Don't move until I say so, I sent out to my warriors. I then realized something. I pulled at the mind link that's been empty for 2 weeks. Tulai, I said tentatively. There was no answer for a moment and I wondered if she could hear me. I have missed your voice, she said quietly and full of emotion. I have missed you every moment since you left me, I said, feeling a tear roll down my cheeks. I got down to business. We need to get you away from him. Do you have any ideas? I asked. I will ask to go to the bathroom. He's never said no to that request, she said. Tulai, I said, I didn't know how to ask. He hasn't hurt me, Markus. Me and the pups are fine. I'm actually really confused. He feeds me and lets me move about the house. I don't think his heart is in it anymore, he's just going through the motions. His soul is in pain. We're here. I have to go, love. I'll tell you when I'm alone, she said before she cut the mind link. On my signal. Our Luna will get away from him and then we rush him, I said, and then told Diego of the plan so he could advise his people. I see movement, Markus, they are in front of the women's bathroom. Celeste has gone inside, Danny said. Wait for her to tell me. We don't know if she's safe yet, I answered. Markus, I only have 2 minutes. I'm locked in the bathroom. If you're going to do something now, she said urgently. Now, I linked everyone and told Diego. We all shifted and ran towards the visitors' area. We encountered his warriors and an angry sun god waiting outside the bathroom. His warriors rushed at us as he started pushing at the door. I heard the snarls of our warriors clash against his. Atlas dodged everyone as he jumped over the fighting. I was slightly surprised at the distance we covered but had no chance to ponder on it as we landed right in front of the sun god as he crashed into the door, only to stumble back out of the bathroom as he got hit by fireballs. I smirked. That's my Tulai. Atlas didn't hesitate, he ran forward and attacked. We managed to clasp ourselves onto his arm, sinking our teeth onto the muscles. He roared and swung out his arm, trying to get rid of us, but Atlas hung on, swinging forward and using his hind legs and digging it into his burned stomach, making him stumble back from the door. We saw Maya rush into the bathroom, coming back out with Celeste as she tried to run but was unable to move very fast due to her giant stomach. She stopped and doubled over. Maya, Gabriel and Zack surrounded her. Markus! She cried out in pain through the mind link. It was enough to distract Atlas and we were flung away and slammed against the corner of the bathroom with a crack as I felt my spine break in 2. I shifted back into human as Huitzilopochtli approached me, his staff glowing. Helios, no! Celeste fell in front of me while clutching her stomach. She looked up at him and cried, please, no more blood needs to be spilled. Just take me. I tried to grab at her desperately, but she moved out of my reach. My spine was slowly healing, but I couldn't move forward yet. Take my hand and I will call back my warriors. I told you, no one else needs to die. Only you, Child of Chantico, I caught what looked like regret as he looked at the fight in front of him. Till I don't. I groaned, trying to move. She looked at me, pain in her face, tears rolling down her face. I love you, she said as she stood up but immediately doubled over again in pain. She looked up at Huitzilopochtli, please, Helios, let my pups be born. Your line must end. Chantico must not be reborn. He said. But they are innocent, she cried, and I saw Helios' eyes soften for a moment before they hardened. Her descendants must pay the sins of the parent, he held out his hand to her. She looked back at me. I tried to move, I could feel my spine almost back together. I'm sorry, I am not worth so many lives, she then took his hand and he pulled her to him. I growled in rage. Warriors! Retreat! He said before he looked down at me, and once again, jumped away with the love of my life in his arms. I saw him land on top of the moon pyramid. I saw the wolves running towards me. Get her! Save her! I yelled at them and they all turned and began running towards the pyramid. Celeste is unconscious. I'm trying to stop the contractions. The pups are not ready. You need to get here. The moon is almost out. Cara's panicked voice came through the mind link. Atlas roared and forced the shift. We began running towards the pyramid as we started feeling a strange strength flow through us. Jump! We heard the word flitter through my mind but I didn't know where it came from. Jump! The soft voice screamed at us again. I felt our muscles tense and Atlas pushed off the ground. We shifted halfway into the jump and landed at the top of the pyramid with a huff. I jumped over the altar where Celeste was laying on the table and crashed into his still tender flesh as he unsheathed a crystal dagger I recognized from the sketch Celeste had drawn for Evergreen. We stumbled to the ground and I saw the dagger fly out of his hand and towards the edge of the platform. We grappled on the ground, throwing punch after punch for what felt like hours until we heard Celeste's voice shout, "Enough fighting!" Her voice had an ethereal twinge to it that made us both stop. I looked up to see Celeste floating about a couple of feet in the air. She was covered in fire, her hair floating around her. Her eyes on fire. Her hands dripping fire down from them. Helios roared and charged her, trying to get to her but was thrown backwards as he tried to crash through her shield, the smell of burning flesh in the air. I ran towards the edge of the platform, and picked up the crystal dagger. I ran in front of Celeste defensively as Helios struggled upwards. I put my hands upward and through her shield, her fire danced on my arm before it started to slide over my arm and over my body until I was covered completely in her fire. Helios roared. He jumped off but I was right behind him. Landing in front of him, dagger at the ready. This ends now, I said as I threw a fireball at him. I could see all the wolves had stopped running halfway up the pyramid as they saw Celeste floating down towards us. Helios' staff appeared in his hand again and it instantly began glowing. Before either of us could do anything, a blinding light appeared between us moments after Celeste reached the ground. That is enough, brother, a beautiful woman appeared between us. She was wearing a pure white gown with hair pooling at her feet. Her brown skin was glowing. An aura of immense power radiating from her. It will never be enough until you watch them all die, Helios said, rage in his eyes as he looked at our moon goddess. I was so distracted by her sudden appearance that I didn't understand what she meant when she said, "Show him the truth," until I saw Celeste put her hands on either side of his head and I felt myself pulled backward with her into a vision. I saw us on top of the platform again. It took me a minute to realize Celeste had been here before. This was the scene she had described to me when she visited Selene the first time. I saw as Selene and Helios fought while a woman was on the floor behind him. What is this? Why am I here? Helios roared as he tried to swing at me, but we were not physically here, so he hit nothing. He turned back and looked at the fighting. Watch, Helios. You need to see the truth, just like I had to relieve my parents' death. The truth will release you from the path you've taken. You will never live, you will never have peace. You must alter your path, Celeste said, and I looked at her. What was this? Had she not said we needed to kill him? He is just a victim in this too. Selene has shown me. There is another way. Her beautiful voice filled my head. Celeste POV. Celeste, you have to wake up. Cara said. I groaned. What happened? You passed out. We need to do the thing. The thing? What thing? I asked, trying to open my eyes. I could hear Markus fighting. You know, the thing we practiced with Markus. The thing we can do. The thing, she screamed. Cara, calm down. What thing? I said. The thing with the fire. It's a shield. We need to help Markus. Selene thinks we can stop Helios without killing him. She said. Okay. I understand, I said, sitting up on the altar I was on. Markus and Helios were wrestling on the ground, the crystal dagger forgotten a bit away. I took some calming breaths and realized I wasn't in pain anymore. I touched my stomach. The pups are fine. I calmed your body and the contractions stopped. Cara answered for me. I started pulling deep within me, feeling and letting the fire burn like we'd practiced with Markus. I felt myself start to burn and I opened my eyes. I started floating as the fire intensified. Enough fighting, I said, and my voice sounded louder than I thought it would. I saw Markus come towards me after Helios tried and failed to push through my shield. He lifted his hand and covered his entire body with fire. I couldn't help but admire him from behind as it glowed with fire until Cara reminded me that this was not the time. Helios jumped away and I was stunned to see Markus jump down to follow. Selene has gifted mate with a gift of his own, Cara purred as we floated down to them. I wondered briefly if we would be able to share his as he shared ours when a blinding light made me shield my eyes. Selene appeared between Helios and Markus. She looked at me and said, "Show him the truth," and without being told, I knew what to do. I put my hands on his head and I felt the familiar pull backwards. We watched as Helios walked forward towards his mother. He knelt in front of her, love in his eyes. I could see his sorrow the longer he looked at her. It was the same sorrow that I had felt when I relived my parents' deaths. I could also feel Markus' confusion at my words, but enough was enough. Too many lives had been destroyed, including Helios. He'd live with this sorrow, unable to move on for over 1,000 years. In the 2 weeks I'd watched him, I could see he was not beyond saving. He just needed to see the truth. He jumped backwards when he saw it. That shadow behind her and the smirk as she poisoned her son against her own daughter. He walked around her, trying to see what the shadow was. As the moon gave way to the sun, the shadow of Tezcatlipoca, the god of darkness, became more visible. Helios' eyes widened and he leaned forward as he listened to the whisperings of the god of darkness to his mother. He saw the corruption of his words darken her eyes and she repeated the words to his son. She was working a spell, using his love for her to influence his actions and rage towards his sister. Time sped up and he saw as the shadow grew over the years, his mother's eyes becoming black as night as she worked her magic on him, causing him to attack faster and harder at his sister. He looked at his sister, tears glistening in his eyes. We fought for 100 years. Did she never attack? He said as he noticed that she never went for an attack, even when he would leave himself open. All she did was defend herself as she tried to talk to him. She is your sister. She loves you still. She wants you to live, I said as I saw her turn around and see the damage their fight had done to their people. She threw the lance at their mother and the god of darkness shrieked before it disappeared, before Helios' past self rushed to her. There was nothing left but the lifeless figure of his mother for him to see. There was a blinding light after Selene plunged the dagger into her heart and I felt the pull forward as the vision ended. We were back in the field and the moment the vision ended, I ran towards Markus who put me behind his back. We were surrounded by wolves now, all bowing before our moon goddess. Helios dropped to his knees in front of his sister, looking at the ground. I'm sorry. I didn't know. You have spent 1,000 years trying to kill our siblings for trying to protect you from our mother and Tezcatlipoca. It is time to stop, she looked over at us. There will be more battles in the future, my children. Have faith in the bond. Have faith in your friendships. Together you can beat the evil ahead, she looked down at Helios and grabbed his hand. Find your redemption, brother, she said before she looked up at the sky. There was another blinding light and when the light dissipated, they were both gone. Markus looked around, making sure the threat was gone. All of Helios' warriors were gone. The world began to sway as I felt the last of my energy leave me. The contractions, the fire, the visions. It was all too much. I grabbed onto his hand as he took me into his arms. The sparks I had missed for 2 weeks exploded down my body as he held me before I fainted. Sleep. Everything will be fine. This battle is over. You did so well, Cara said, before I gave into the darkness. Markus POV I felt her exhaustion and her hand on my arm as she fainted. She is fine. Cara put her into a healing sleep. She expended too much energy. The pups are okay. They need to sleep, Atlas said, though he couldn't keep the whimper out of his voice as we saw Outmate unconscious. Drive west, I called out, and I saw him push through the crowd. He checked Celeste over and agreed with what Atlas said. Danny came forward and handed me a pair of shorts, only then realizing I had been fighting since I had shifted when I jumped to the platform. Speaking of, how did we jump like that? I asked Atlas. It is a gift from the moon goddess. She deemed us worthy, Atlas said proudly. So? Diego interrupted our talk, fidgeting slightly from the adrenaline, that was anticlimactic. I kind of expected a longer fight. All we did was run. Danny snorted as he held Maya in his arms, one hand on her stomach. She had refused to stay behind and he'd been so worried about their pup. He was more than okay with not having her in a fight. A couple of people gave uncomfortable laughs as they agreed. "Speak for yourself." "I fought him twice," I said, unable to stop looking at my mate. Half expecting her to just disappear from my arms. "What happened?" "I mean, that was barely a battle. No one died." Huitzilopochtli recalled his warriors. "You just jumped to the platform, then back down covered in fire. The moon goddess shows up and you guys just stand still for like 20 minutes with all of your eyes gone white, then they just left." He summarized the ridiculous series of events. "Celeste happened," I said. "She didn't want to kill him. She told me he was kind and his soul was in pain. She wanted to stop the bloodshed, not just today, but for our pups and every generation to come. She took him to watch his battle with our goddess that began this whole madness and he finally saw the truth of what happened. Our goddess was not to blame, but that the god of darkness was behind everything. The moon goddess told him he should find his redemption and took him from here." I looked down at the crystal dagger I had dropped on the floor. "Let's go home. If my mate and our goddess deemed him worthy of redemption, who are we to go against it? If he dares to try again, we have a way to stop him," I said, picking up the dagger and giving it to Jillian, who wrapped it around his shirt. I stood with Celeste in my arms and started heading towards the cars. I put my face in her hair and her scent calmed my soul. I settled her into our room and curled us both under the blanket. "You are going to hate me so much, but I'm tying you to my side for the rest of eternity," I told her as I felt her snuggle closer together. I put my arm around her belly and rubbed circles around it. "I missed you, my pups," I said as I felt their hearts beat. One of the pups kicked my hand and I smiled. "I love you too." I kissed Celeste's cheek and let myself go to sleep. "Markus! Markus, wake up baby," I heard Celeste's urgent voice in my ear. I pulled her closer to me and she groaned. My eyes fluttered open in alarm. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" I asked. "You're putting more pressure on my bladder and I'm about to pee myself," she groaned and I laughed, just happy to have her back. I lifted her up and ran to the bathroom. "OMG, that's making it worse," she screamed as I put her down in the bathroom. "Aren't you going to let me pee?" she asked. "Of course, go ahead," I said, closing the door with me in it. "Markus," she said as she danced on her feet in front of the toilet. "Let me pee." "You can wait outside," she said. "No to lie, you were gone for 2 weeks. You can pee with us here." "We will turn around," I said and heard her grunt. A minute later, I heard as she relieved her bladder. She flushed and started washing her hands while I also relieved my own bladder. I looked over at her and she was blushing. I washed my hands and put my hands around her. My arms barely went completely around her belly. "Why are you blushing?" I whispered in her ear and felt her shiver. "You wouldn't let me pee," she said. "I've never had to pee in front of someone." I kissed under her ear. "I'm sorry. I thought I had lost you." My voice broke as I replayed her being taken again in my head. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." She turned in my arms as best as she could and grabbed my face. Helios won't come after us again. I can feel it. His heart wasn't in it anymore even before I showed him the truth. I buried my head in the curve of her neck. How can you truly know that? I asked her. I watched him for 2 weeks, my love. He was going through the motions but he couldn't even hurt me. No matter how annoying I got, how sick, or sad. He fed me, he gave me books, he stopped at every gas station imaginable so I could pee. By the way, did Evergreen catch me? I looked at the camera as much as I could without making it obvious. I simply nodded my head against her neck. My point is, I don't think he could have hurt me. He didn't hurt the girls he bought. I lifted my head at that. What? He bought them off Alpha Jeff, fed them, got them healthy and then paid a brujo to erase their memories and then left them at the edge of packs to be taken in. He told you that? And you believed him? I asked her, wondering why she would believe the words of her captor. Wondering if she had Stockholm Syndrome. She looked at me offended. No, of course not. He took me to a pack near his mansion. I saw Janet from a distance. She had a pup and looked happy. So then why would he keep hunting for so long? I asked her and she sighed. I think he did it out of duty. For his mother. Now that he's seen the truth, I hope he and Selene had a chance to talk, she sighed, putting her head against my chest. I hugged her as tight as I could without hurting her. I needed to feel the sparks I had missed for 2 weeks. I felt wetness on my chest and I felt her shake. Hey, I said and I picked her up and took her back to the bed where I just held her on my lap as she cried. I rubbed small circles on her back, letting her release her fears. Atlas kept howling until her shakes ceased. Cara said you almost died, she whispered, holding me close. It doesn't matter. I've got you back. I said, kissing her head. She looked up at me with her beautiful blue eyes rimmed with tears. It matters. I'm so sorry, Markus. I didn't know Cara would do that, but I don't know that I wouldn't have done the same. The vision Selene showed her. So much loss. I couldn't do that to the pack, but when I heard that I almost lost you, I felt like my heart was breaking. I was so close to lie. So close to you before he got to you. I felt my heart leave with you. There is nothing in the world for me if you're not in it, I said, and she grabbed me and kissed me. I growled as she climbed on top of me. I stood up to lay her on the bed when the door burst open. I sighed and sat back down, making sure that Celeste's legs were covering my raging hard-on. You guys have really bad timing, I said, and Celeste giggled. You're not the only one that missed her. Don't be greedy, Alpha, Maya said as she came around behind Danny. You saw her yesterday, I pointed out. That was in the heat of battle, she insisted. You would think he would have learned not to argue with a pregnant woman by now, she told Danny as she grabbed Celeste and pulled her off me. How they were hugging, I don't know. They looked like a wishbone, attached at the arms with their 2 bodies to their side. I couldn't help but laugh at the scene as I put on a pair of jeans. I knew when I was vested. Danny, Camilla, and Jillian were all smiling at the girls. This room is getting cramped. How about we go down for breakfast? I suggested. Oh, that's why we came. Alpha Diego is expecting us for breakfast, Camilla said. Celeste's stomach growled as if on cue and she blushed. Markus POV. A few weeks later. It's not fair. You did this, you should feel this pain too. Celeste yelled at me again as she pushed. Atlas whimpered in my head at her words. Stop whining, Dad said this might happen and you're not helping. I reprimanded him as I felt the hand she was holding break yet again as Celeste pushed. I'm sorry. I love you Tulai, I groaned as she squeezed harder. Her face was red, she was sweating profusely. She'd been in labor for about 25 hours now. Drive West and Dr. Castle had been taking shifts through her labor and the waiting room outside was full of our friends and family. The entire pack was waiting for the twins to be born. I hadn't slept or left her side. She's gone through all the emotions in the rainbow in the last 25 hours. She's been happy, nervous, she's cried, she's begged the twins to come out. She'd demanded an epidural and then growled when someone came in with the needle. She's tried to negotiate with the twins so they would be born soon. She'd laughed from exhaustion and now we had hit anger. No one tells you this when they talk about having pups, she growled in between pushes. That's because this is the most insignificant part of having kids for a family, Luna, Drive West said. You say that because you've never had two alpha pups trying to tear you in half, she screamed at him as she began pushing again. She slumped back as Drive West lifted our pup up and gave it to the nurse. Why isn't my baby crying? Celeste asked, panicking. We have to clear the airway, Luna, give the nurse a, there it is, he said as a strong solid wail came from the nurse's station. She turned back around with a blue bundle in her arms, dark tufts of straight black hair visible. She put the baby on Celeste so she could hold him while she passed the first placenta and waited to push out our baby girl. Have you decided on a name yet, Luna? Drive West asked. Celeste looked up at me and nodded. Corey Alexander, I said. As if summoning the namesake, Dad's voice came in through the mind link. Son, don't be selfish. I want to see my grandchild. Maya is bugging me to see the baby. Why don't you take him to go meet his family? Celeste said. I can feel a contraction coming. I bent down and kissed her as I took our pup from her arms. His blue eyes staring up at me. Atlas wouldn't stop doing flips as we walked towards the door and puffed his chest as we went through the double doors to see everyone waiting. I heard Celeste screaming again, and I hesitated. Go son. We will take care of. What did you choose for a name? He asked, and I smiled at him. Corey Alexander, I said, and his eyes started to mist. I'll have a nurse come get him shortly. I said. I have to go meet my daughter. I went through to the double doors and let the nurse know where my pup was. I knew there was no way they would let him go so quickly. Where's Corey? Celeste grunted after a push. Dad has him. The nurse will get him shortly. I would have probably been murdered if I tried to take him from the mob of our family standing outside. Did they like his name? She asked, her big blue eyes looking up at me nervously. Dad started crying. I think he approved, I said as I took her hand again and kissed her lips. You are amazing. On the next contraction, big push Luna, Drive West said. She could only nod. I felt her hand begin to tighten on mine as the next contraction hit her. She began pushing as hard as she could and after a minute, she slumped back and Drive West handed the nurse our baby girl. After cleaning her airwaves, we heard the beautiful sound of her cries and the nurse handed Celeste our pup while they continued to work on her lower half. A name for this beautiful girl, Alpha? Drive West asked. I looked down at our baby. Belarus Grace, I said. We had decided to combine the names Bella and Rose. Rose having been my mother's name. You do both of your lineages proud, Drive West said as he began filling out paperwork while the nurses cleaned. Son. I heard Dad through the double doors a few minutes later and I looked down at Celeste. She shrugged and nodded with a small smile. We already knew we wouldn't be able to keep them out long. Come in, but only for a bit, I said. I could feel Celeste's exhaustion through the bond. I took our pup from her and she immediately began cooing in my arms. My heart exploded with love as I looked down at her grey eyes and black curls. Our family and friends gushed over our babies and Celeste until Drive West came in and kicked them all out. 2 months later, Alpha, there's an intruder at the border. He isn't doing anything. He's just standing there. One of my warriors mind-linked me. I ran out the door of the conference room. Celeste was at the hospital with Maya while Marie looked after our pups. Maya had begun having contractions and Danny had time-sensitive work, so I took it over while he ran her to the PAC hospital. Celeste had gone to make sure he didn't faint. Alpha, he just jumped the border, came a very alarmed guard. I pushed through the double doors of the pack house when I saw Helos land in the driveway in front of the stairs. I growled as I felt panic and fear rush through me. He couldn't be here. He wasn't taking my family. This was supposed to be over. As if reading my mind. Helos pulled a hand up, showing that he wasn't here to attack. He put down a box and then leapt away. It's okay. Stand down. He's left again. I answered as I approached the box cautiously. I let Atlas come forward and we sniffed the box. I can't smell anything bad. Atlas confirmed, so I picked up the box. There was a letter addressed to Celeste on top. I opened the box and looked at its contents skeptically. There were a couple of Mexican cloth dolls inside, 2 baby blankets for our pups and several stuffed alebrijes. You have a delivery tool, I mind-linked her as I walked back inside the pack house. But I haven't ordered anything, she said. The sun god left it for you at our doorstep, I said, and I could feel the surprise through the bond. Why? She asked. I don't know. It looks like gifts for the twins and a letter addressed to you, I said. What does the letter say? She asked, concerned. I haven't opened it, I said, and I felt her roll her eyes. Well, open it. What if he wants to kill me again? She said. I opened the letter and read it to her. Celeste, I can't ask for forgiveness because there's none that could be given for what I've done, but I wanted to thank you for helping me see the light and to warn you. I've heard through the channels that there were beings present in the shadows of our battle. They have seen the powers you and your mate displayed and covet them. I will be hunting them down, but you must be prepared to protect your family. I have left you my email and phone number below. If you have any need, I hope I eventually earn your trust enough that you will use them. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I will do what I can to make the rest of my eternal life mean something. You asked me if I had ever lived even though I had been alive for over a millennium, so I am taking your advice and try to find something to live for. I have changed the deed of the house in Mexico to your name. I think I need a fresh start, away from that place. You may do as you wish with it. Helios. There was silence on the other end of the mind link for a minute. Have the gifts checked for any poisons before giving them to the kids. I want to believe he's changed Markus, but it's only been 2 months. I won't take chances, she said, and I sighed, relieved at her response. Yes, Tulai. I love you. I love you more. Come this way, Maya is going to start pushing. You don't want to miss the birth of your nephew, do you? On my way, I said as I ordered the gifts inspected to a guard I called over. I looked up at the sky as I walked over to the Pack Hospital. Thank you, Selene. I sent up a prayer of thanks as I walked through the double doors, Marie right behind me with the stroller. Celeste came over as I took over the stroller and I put my hand around her waist. I looked around our family in the waiting room while I heard Maya scream for 15 minutes before I heard a child's cry followed by Danny's howl of joy. There was nothing I would change about my life. It was everything I never knew I needed and the opposite of what I thought I wanted. The woman in my arms had changed my entire life and made me want to be a better person every morning as I watched her sleep. Epilogue. Helios POV. I woke up on a beach after my sister took me away from the battle at the pyramids. I wasn't sure where I was or why. I sat on the sand for hours thinking about what I had just seen. I mourned my mother and then, for the first time in 1,000 years, I mourned the lives I had taken in my misguided journey of revenge. A couple of days passed before I stood up from the beach. Find your redemption, brother. That is the task she'd given me. I walked a couple of miles before I found a store. I grabbed the first newspaper I could find. San Diego, California. Why would she send me to California? I was tempted to just leave, but she had sent me here for a reason and I needed to find out what that was. If whatever I was supposed to do here had to do with my redemption, it meant there were people that were in trouble. I found an internet cafe and contacted one of my warriors via email. I would need to relocate my base of operations to here. I sent him a list of instructions with immediate needs and things to get ready. It's been 10 months since I started moving all of my operations from Mexico City to San Diego. I'm still not sure what Selene wants me to do here, but I've found a new hobby to keep me busy until then. After warning Celeste and Markus, I was spending some time gathering information on anyone hunting her and her family. It was the least I could do after everything that had happened. I had already killed 3 threats and sent her information over a few more that may make their way to Arizona over email. I didn't dare go see her yet. Some actions are hard to erase. I had also bought out a shipping/exporting business that had been about to go under and expanded. While going over the books and schedules, auditing the logs, I found some discrepancies that the owner had not been aware of. For the last 2 years, there's been shipping containers that have not made it into the logs. We'd reviewed security footage and found blocks of it missing and began to investigate. What I found did not surprise me. The import and export of illegal goods was fairly common in ports. I had weeded out the import of cocaine from Colombia in my own company in Mexico in the 90s when I had first taken over it after I'd come back from abroad. I had also found the black market and bought the girls from Celeste's pack while looking for her in Arizona. If the pattern I found in the books are correct, I would be able to see a container come into port tonight. I needed more information on what they were importing, and how much. I needed to figure out what I was up against before I acted. My new guards were too reckless and inexperienced, and this work required finesse. I needed to cut off the head of the snake, not the tail. I always liked to do the recon myself anyways. There were always details to be picked up. Nuances that let you know who was in charge and who was not worth leaving alive. I stopped thinking and focused on the task at hand as I saw men arrive in a solid black SUVs and a long van with no license plates. I grabbed my camera and began taking pictures as people began exiting. They had one man jump onto the crane and began to make their way to a docked ship that was supposed to be exporting textiles. I saw as they removed 3 unmarked containers with identical graffiti on the side. They brought in 2 semis and parked them a little bit away from the opening of 2 of the containers. The wind was blowing downwind, so I couldn't quite hear much with the shutter in my camera going a mile a minute. They opened the first container and clothes started spilling out. A couple of men began scooping them out the container to get to the real import. I saw as they began to remove boxes. Long and thin, squared. It was clear to me what these were. Rare black market goods. Likely art pieces from the delicate way they were being handled. These didn't go into the semis. They were loaded onto the van carefully, confirming that they were deemed more valuable than the rest. At least it wasn't people. I could take my time investigating this when lives were not hanging in the balance. A small man with a clipboard was ticking off each item as it was pulled out, and once that container was deemed empty, they loaded it back into the ship. They moved on to the next container. They backed one of the semis closer to the container, and as they began removing the clothing that surrounded their contraband, I began to hear some sounds. I raised an eyebrow, camera at the ready. I could only imagine the level of noise down there if I could hear it, with these whines carrying most of it away from me. Whatever was in there was alive, but it wasn't human. One of the men went in with chains while another followed with a long taser. I saw as they wheeled out a cage with a white tiger inside. I began to realize the scope of their operation. Usually, rare goods was a niche trade. Rare art, animals, or weapons. Rarely did you see in operations that dealt with more than one type of black market good. It required serious connections and muscle to be this broad and not get caught. That meant there was serious money and power behind these traffickers, and it wasn't going to be easy to dismantle it. I smiled as I took picture after picture of endangered animals being brought out. I was going to enjoy this hunt. The tiny human with the clipboard finally deemed the container empty, and it was put back onto the ship. The semi left, leaving one container left. I leaned a little too far forward in anticipation. After giving up my misguided quest for revenge, I will admit that I had found myself bored without a good hunt. The third container was opened and a single cage was wheeled out. I was not expecting to see a giant beautiful white wolf wheeled out. I almost dropped my camera. That was not a wolf. It was most definitely a werewolf. Was this why I was here? Was Selene wanting me to save this rare werewolf? White werewolves were almost unheard of. They were deemed to have special healing qualities and occasionally other unknown abilities. I wondered briefly if these people, who appeared to be human, knew what they held in their hands. I felt the wind swirl around me as I saw the wolf look up at the moon. Her white coat was glowing with a tinge of blue from the ocean waters and the moon. It lifted its head and after a moment, it cried out the most sorrowful and anguished howl I had ever heard. It constricted my heart, and I was surprised to feel a tear falling down my cheeks. The semi left and I left my hiding spot and returned to my house. As I downloaded the shots and video I took of tonight, I walked out to my balcony. I looked up as the full moon shined down from the behind the clouds. I won't let you down, sister. Don't forget to like, to subscribe and share. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.